You got everybody on?
We're just waiting for.
No, you got everybody.
We're waiting for the mayor.
She's not coming. She's in.
She's not zooming?
No, she's in its deposition today. Yeah, I was instructed of that last night.
Okay. All right.
So that's a change. Yeah.
So we're good because Andy is not here and Mark is not.
Okay.
There were 2 changes to the meeting minutes that were.
I got them. I got them. Yeah. Hey, Ben. I got a quick question on the RFQ. On the RFP process in the state of Nevada, if you do an RFP process and not in good faith, and you bring in the house and you don't award a contract, does it make the person liable for?
Andy Chapman is not here, Mark Servant is not here, and there she's using a deposition right now. So we only have, we have a quorum. We barely have a quorum. We have 6, okay.
Just remember when we speak, we gotta turn the microphones on. And then when we do that.
But if we're going to hire. Okay. All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Apologize for the delay, it's 10:05. Welcome. We are here for the special meeting of the Board of Directors for the Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority. And with that, I will ask Mr. Murdoch, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this morning, sir?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Member Murdoch. I appreciate that. Madam Clerk, can I get a roll call?
Yes, please. Councilwoman Bybee? Here. Mr. Chapman is not with us this morning. Shannon Keel? I can see Shannon, but we can't hear you. You're on mute.
Shannon, can you hear us? Shannon Keel? Miss Keel? No, she's... we see her on the Zoom call. Hopefully she will jump in here with us.
Mayor Shivy is not with us this morning. We have Rick Murdoch.
Here.
Jessica Sfraza.
Here.
Ann Silver.
Here.
And Mr. Sturbins is not with us this morning.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I appreciate it. We have a quorum. All right. Madam Clerk, is there any comments from the public?
We have no public comments at this time.
Are there any public wishing to speak this morning? All right. Seeing no public comment, we'll close public comment. I will bring it back for item C. This is the approval of the agenda of the August 19th Special Board of Special Board of Directors meeting. Can I get a motion?
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
I got a motion for Mr. Murdoch. Do I have a second? Second for Ms. Silver.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
can't hear you.
Ms. Safrazi, can you hear me better now?
Yes. I
Okay.
can hear you now.
All right. So
I couldn't hear you before. I don't know about Shannon.
I think it's
but
I think
can hear
the
you.
multiple layers trying to talk into the microphone probably are just waiting. I will try to project myself a little bit better for you. All right, so we are on item
Thank
C.
you.
This is the approval of the agenda for the August 19th, 2021 Special Board of Directors meeting. I have a motion by Mr. Murdoch, a second by Ms. Silver. Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item D, this is the approval of the minutes of the July 27th, 2021 regular board meeting. The meetings that were presented in the packet have been amended and changed. You have been sent, all the board of directors were sent the amended minutes. And is there anybody who has any changes or alterations to the minutes other that have been sent to the board of directors?
Mr. Chair, I do not accept the amended minutes from the July 27, 2021 Board of Directors meeting. Move to approve.
I have a motion by Councilwoman Bybee.
Second.
Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Murdoch. I will call for the vote. Seeing no further public comment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, we are out on to item E1. And this is the authorization for the issuance of a request for proposal and professional management and operation of the National Bowling Stadium, Reno Event Center, Reno Sparks Convention Center, and Reno Livestock Event Center. With that, I will turn it over to our CEO, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy to talk where we're at right now. Currently, the current contract goes through next June with the current provider. We have been doing due diligence in and around this area, and quite honestly, what I would suggest right now is that we go to an RFQ for consideration on how we move forward with this operation and potential for new opportunities.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Harris. I do appreciate that. I'm going to open this up for discussion to the board. But before we do that, though, I'm going to ask legal counsel to provide us a little bit of clarity. There has been some discussion with myself and legal counsel in regards to the difference between an RFQ and an RFP and what that process is, so that all of the board has some clarity about what NRS says to that. Mr. Kennedy, can you enlighten us?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the RCVA in the past has used RFQs for professional services that are exempt from the competitive bidding requirements in the statutes. There is an AG opinion that expressly says facilities management is not a professional service and is subject to competitive bidding requirements. So that's why we have it agendized for an RFP, which is the vehicle that the RCVA uses to comply with the competitive bidding statutes.
Okay. And if through an RFP process, no operator is identified as suitable or not, and that is that the RFP is closed, there is no ramifications from non-performance of those RFPs. Is that correct?
Correct. It's always at the agency's discretion, and if it were elected to reject all bids, it would be so entitled.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I'm going to open it up for discussion. Mr. Murdoch.
Ben, so technically, depending if none of the proposals worked, we could take it in-house. Correct.
Question. Mr. Kennedy, if I understand then, there's no breach of contract we're talking about.
Correct. What, as I understand it, what we're talking about is the current contract will expire next year. And so we would continue with the current provider through the end of that contract. And what we're talking about is what happens when that contract ends,
All right.
who we bring on board at that point to take over.
Thank you.
Ms. Fraza.
Sir? Yeah, just a couple things. I do have concerns about going to an RFP. Just me personally, I think we should be bringing this in-house. We did get an email from the rodeo on their expertise for the equestrian center. I think locally we would do much better with the facilities, with expertise in those matters, whether we have bowling like we did, whether we have folks with equestrian experience for the Reno Rodeo, all these facilities. And also, I'd like to get some opinions on the modernization of these facilities too, because I think some things need to be probably modernized. But I have a real problem going out to RFP for myself personally, because I think we need to bring this in-house, and I think a year flies by, less than a year, so that our new CEO has the time to put in the staff necessary. That's going to take some time, especially with this labor market, to bring it in-house. And then in addition to that, a third party, we're paying them a portion of the cut. I can tell you from experience with the event center, for example, you have people who are fronting the money to put in concerts there, and we have our current provider who gets a cut of that. So I know that Councilman Bybee and Charles, you guys went to that convention in Baltimore. I think part of the big thing we heard from you both was about community, and I think we have to specialize and bring this in local. And quite frankly, with the size of our market, I'm concerned, and I am concerned, which is probably for a later date. I'm concerned about our current operator. And the kind of feedback personally that I've received from the community on that performance. I've heard complaints from the rodeo about the maintenance around the livestock event center for trees, watering trees, things like that. So I think over the next 10 months, we've got to keep an eye on that too, the current performance. So that's all, Mr. Chair. I would have been more comfortable with an RFQ, but it sounds like legally we have to do an RFP, and I'm just not there to go out. It would be disingenuous for me, because I think we need to bring it in-house.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to echo what Ms. Ferraza is saying. As the head of the Chamber of Commerce, I would love to see us use more local vendors, local opportunities for businesses. I think we should go in-house, if that's the term, understanding that that may add additional work for Mr. Harris and his team. But I do think we have a unique opportunity to keep the money local and to do more with what we have in this community. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Councilman Bybee.
So I guess I have a question, a couple of things. Obviously, the rodeo and the livestock event center are just like a no-brainer for me. I mean, that just makes sense. Their interest in it, their expertise in it, the Heritage Center, everything that's happening over there really makes sense for them to be the operators of that facility and not RSCVA. And so that I'm in full support of. With an RFQ, does that necessarily mean that we're going outside to a big agency to do that? Can the RFQ be any local vendors or local people? Does it, by its very nature, it's open to anyone who wants to bid for that contract, correct?
Correct. So the last time this went out to bid, if memory serves, we opened it up to anybody that wanted to bid on it, and we also gave the ability to separate out facilities. So to bid on all 4 facilities, to bid on just the convention center and the livestock event center, I think, were together, and then the bowling stadium and the Reno Event Center were grouped together. But we could do whatever we want. I mean, we could go out to bid and say you can bid on all 4, you can bid on one singularly, you can bid on whatever combination you want. We can certainly leave that open as an option.
Mr. Harris.
And just to follow up for board member Sraza, who mentioned that part of the reason why I had suggested RFQ was for that consideration to still possibly bring that in-house. So to look out what's outside our options, whether it's the current vendor, other vendors, or bring that in-house. And my understanding in talking with Mr. Kennedy is that would still allow us to potentially bring that in-house. And as a follow-up point, there was some due diligence that I had done after the last board meeting, spending time with another destination and understanding what they were doing outside operations versus internal operations, so that we can make a better informed decision. Thank you.
Mr. Murdoch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple things. We looked at it financially. Right now, I think we're scheduled to probably lose $5.4 million. On a bad day at the RCVA, when they ran it, it was 3-2. I think if you get back in there and we've learned a lot from the COVID. I think all operators have on how to operate even more efficiency because you didn't have the volumes. But I do believe we can't go down this road with a third party because whether you do any event in there, they've got to get their cut. And I'm just trying to simplify it. It should be us. It should be us providing jobs for our locals. Should be us, if any of the properties where the Peppermill, Atlantis, or Caesars want to use any of the facilities and throw a concert in there, it shouldn't be held to a third party holding them, taking away the opportunity to even, when we put money up, we just want to even break even, or we want to, do the best we can. So I'm really looking at the financial, and I'm also, it's at a time when we had two different companies. We had SMG who promised the world and didn't deliver nothing. We got nothing. And then you've got ASM who said they don't do this. So they don't do what SMG said they do. So I'm just saying it's kind of, we can do a better job. We've already got people, I think, in this organization that know how to do this. And be a lot of savings, be good for the image of the RCVA, take back its facilities. And I believe that if you need to sublet them out to, for instance, the rodeo wants to run the rodeo grounds, maybe there's a way to do that. I don't know, but I think we really have to look at financially and what's best for our community. And it's take them back.
Ms. Silver.
Mr. Chair, I want to echo again what Mr. Murdoch has said. It seems to me that living with SMG, and I can speak to this personally from the Chamber's standpoint, we've had nothing but issues, and it prevents local businesses, local vendors, caterers, restaurants, all the places that should be making money. You can't even select them to do your event. You are required to go through SMG. And while I think they have a great reputation, we can see the financial implications, and we also understand that we're all about our community. That's what RSCVA is all about. So I think it's a no-brainer to say we should look to bring it in-house, and maybe that doesn't even require a bid. Maybe that's just a management decision or a board decision that says, we'll figure out how to operate these, subcontract them, sell them, whatever it may be, but that we get rid of, that we move past the notion that a large corporation based 3,000 miles away should operate our facilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Silver. So I'm going to provide 2 points of context. One, the way we're stylized today is that we as a board can move forward with an RFP process if we so choose, or not at all. Currently, the contract with ASM is not under consideration today specifically, but I think as we understand that contract expires in June of next year, and we can deal with that at a different time and date. But this was really just to identify what that next process was, and I think we've got a lot of input today from the board in that direction. What I would also say as a second point, as to your point, Ms. Silver, is when you have an opportunity that Mr. Harris has brought forward a number of times in his presentations about philanthropic community operations, things that we could do through the community for nonprofit organizations, youth sports leagues, whatever. For example, we've had the smoke from the California wildfires has been horrendous, and I'm sorry, and for those that have lost their homes and how terrible that has been. However, our lives still continue here in the Reno-Sparks area, and we have to exist in that. And there's a lot of outdoor sports going on right now, soccer, football, youth sports that could potentially utilize an arena like that at a no-fee cost if this board so chose to do so. But right now, because of our contractual obligations, we can't do that. We have to charge those events, anybody, a fee to utilize that facility. And so, to your point, it gives us the latitude to be a little bit more flexible and dynamic with the decisions of those facilities. So I want to make that very clear, and I think I've heard plenty of other than from Ms. Keel, that there is a large contingent of this board that are here today that would not like to move forward with an RFP process. They would like to maintain the current, potentially having the CEO look into bringing those facilities in-house for under management and go in that direction. Unless there is something different that I'm not hearing, we can move forward maybe in a direction of that. I think if anybody else has anything else to add.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, yes, Ms.
A couple questions. When we say in-house, would that mean an addition to our staff in order to oversee the operations and management of the facilities?
Well,
Is it a staff?
Well, we can't really discuss that because we're not agendized to talk about what an in-house, we can talk about that. I'd like to agendize that for a different meeting. And this, because it would put us in a position that he would have to answer questions and we would deliberate on something that we really don't have enough data on yet, correct? Okay. So, but I think it's something we can agendize.
Okay, so I would like to, for further discussion, consideration, if we're looking at in-house, what that means, and have a discussion later on answering that. Also, from a legal perspective, we have until December to extend the contract with ASM. So do we have to make a decision today or at a later meeting if we're doing that extension or not? Because we only have till December, even though the contract runs through June, correct?
That is correct. And so we have time to make that at a later meeting to decide whether to extend that. And that would have to be agendized as well, that extension of their contract. So we can, at a future meeting, discuss what the cost of an in-house process. Today, we're merely talking about moving forward with an RFP, and I think that the sentiment shared here today is not to move forward with an RFP, to look at and explore options of bringing that in-house and what a possible extension of a contract would look. And so that we'd have to do that at a subsequent board meeting.
Okay, I appreciate that. It answers my questions, and moving forward with that, I would agree on not supporting moving forward today with the RFP. So thank you.
Thank you, Council. Ms. Safraza, I had you.
Yes, Chairman Lucy, just wanted to echo that again, and I do think we need it on a board meeting sooner rather than later, probably September, just because I think we're in a unique opportunity because we have a new CEO, and to put a team in place, that's going to take time to put a team in place if we do it in-house. And I really would be interested in the perspective, too, from Board Member Silver. On the local, I really want to get some local input on how we can make this great with our locals. So I think in between the next meeting, and you, Chairman Lucy, said it absolutely, and Councilman Bybee, our ability not to be able to help the nonprofits too, or to have sports venues, to have to get a third-party permission. Like, I mean, to me, that I think all those things, we've got to start moving in that direction. So I just want to make sure we have time, and maybe we get input from the other stakeholders. I think that will be important from the rodeo, bowlers, others, the users of those facilities. So when our CEO has the opportunity to come back to us on what we're asking for, the in-house, that we have all that input, and especially the community, those small businesses. And I really would like to get your input and feedback on that, on the in-house perspective as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Frauda.
Mr. Chair, can I weigh?
Yeah, Ms. Keel, please.
Thank you. My only comment is the original reason why that we decided to go to a third party was because we acknowledged that we did not have the expertise and the resources to effectively manage the facilities. And so I don't necessarily think that we have learned anything because we've had an organization that hasn't done a great job. And so obviously we haven't learned anything from anyone great. So I'm not necessarily saying that we should or should not take it in-house. All I just want to make sure everyone recognizes the original reason why we did go to a third party. And the number one goal of this organization is to sell and market the destination. And my only fear is that by putting a lot of time, resource, money, effort into doing it ourselves, that we're taking away from that number one goal. Now, obviously, we lost a lot of money with SMG, and so financially, to Rick's point, it might not necessarily be a worse situation. If anything, it should be a better situation. But we have to make sure that if we're going to do it in-house, that we have the expertise and that we know what we're doing and that we're as effective as possible. And I'm just not sure if we've learned anything necessarily since then. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Keel. And like I said previously, I think it's important to agendize it. We'll bring it back in September and have a true agenda item to discuss the potentials of what that would look like, the management style, because there would be an organizational structure change. So we'll agendize that to have that more detailed conversation. I just don't want to get too far off of the agenda today in regards to where we're stylized, which is to stay within whether or not the issuance of an RFP. And so from my understanding, that is not where we're at. Mr. Murdoch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, aren't we on it? We have to notify them by December, I think, is the contract, if I'm not mistaken. And if at least you're give them enough knowledge, enough head start on it. And like I said, however we do this, everybody will have a shot at doing it. What's the best case scenario? And I'm agreeing now more though than ever that we need our facilities to be activated. And I think bringing locals in, whether it's the basketball tournaments, I would bring football into the facilities if you could. I mean, we had a bull riding event in the downtown event center. So
I understand everybody's very passionate about we will have this discussion, I promise you, in September, and we will get to the timeline. We're just not agendized to talk about it today. I want to make sure that we're staying right on line and staying in our lane. So at this time, I would look for a motion to not move forward with the RFP process and for professional management services.
I'll make the motion that we not, Ann Silver for the record, that we not move forward with the RFP process at this time, and that we agendize for September a thorough discussion of what we do from here.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I have a second from Member Bybee.
Okay, a motion from Member Silver, a second from Member Bybee. Seeing no public comment on this issue, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and we will bring this back for you for your consideration in September. All right. Next is items E2 and E3 that kind of go hand in hand. And so I'm going to open up E2 and E3 at the same time. This is a public hearing to approve Resolution 594 adopting the budget and augmentation for the Arena Sparks Convention Visitors Authority for fiscal year 2021. And we are also going to update, this is an update regarding the 90th annual U.S. Conference of Mayors and discussion of a possible approval to a contract with RCE or Red Carpet Events and the design for the costs and services related to the 90th annual U.S. Conference of Mayors, an amount not to exceed $739,194. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Yeager.
Good morning. So I'm presenting for approval a budget augmentation for fiscal year 2022. As you're aware, our budget is required to be augmented if we anticipate that actual expenditures will exceed budgeted expenditures before the fiscal year end. The augmentation being presented for approval today is for $690,000 in the general fund for costs associated with the 90th annual U.S. Conference of Mayors. And Chair Lucy and Mike Larghetto will lead further discussion regarding the U.S. Conference of Mayors. So I can go ahead and open this up for questions or for the further discussion.
Are there any questions for Ms. Yeager in regards to the budget augmentation?
I have a question.
Ms. Silver.
And for the record, I just want, in the spirit of full disclosure, I contacted Mr. Kennedy because I just wasn't clear how Red Carpet Events was selected. I didn't know. I mean, the chamber would be thrilled to have provided names of organizations and members that do large-scale events, including ourselves. I just didn't understand how that came to be without an RFP or a discussion with the board. I just wanted to state that for the record.
Perfect. That's fantastic. And so, if there aren't any, are there any questions in regards to for Ms. Yeager, in regards to Mr. Murdoch?
Yeah, I appreciate the budget augmentation, and thank you guys. Just, we've had some pretty good months here lately, and I'm just curious as to, how's July coming in with relation to the budget and going forward? Is it?
So this budget augmentation actually budgets out of beginning fund balance. During May, we have to predict what our ending fund balance will be for fiscal year 21, which then rolls into fiscal year 22. Those estimates are ahead of schedule. So this augmentation is out of beginning fund balance. But for July, before we talk about July numbers, I do want to give a shout out to Robert Douglas, our room tax manager. He works extremely hard. This month is no different. He worked extremely hard on room tax collections. We do have solid numbers right now. We're still in the finalization and reconciliation process, but July taxable room revenues in total are right now over $53 million. That would be the highest month of taxable room revenues in the history of the RSCBA.
With money in the bank.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Mr. Harris.
And just to follow up, Mr. Murdoch, on your comment, we made a commitment that every quarter that the subcommittee would review possible augmentation from the start of the new year, and that's still on schedule. So we will absolutely have that scheduled in a subcommittee to bring back to the board.
Ms. Bybee.
Mr. Chair. So Courtney, I have a question, and I'm a little concerned because it seems like we're backwards here. Is the $690,000 for the U.S. Conference of Mayors expenditure?
Correct.
Well, and we're deciding that. Maybe legal can help me.
Yeah, so I think the budget augmentation is to bring the money into the budget. And you can do that without approving the Conference of Mayors contract. So if you want to pull the money into the budget, accept the augmentation, the money's in the budget, and then you can decide if you want to turn around and allocate that money to the red carpet events contract.
Okay, it just seemed backwards to me, and I'm left-handed, and I'm usually always backwards. But I guess, Courtney, my other question would be, is the $690,000 in addition to the previously budgeted $350,000?
Correct. There was $365,000 budgeted originally, and the $690,000 is in addition.
Okay, so that's added to the originally budgeted amount?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Members Keel or Members Fraza? Members Fraza.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. First of all, I wanted to say congratulations to Courtney on that grant. That is phenomenal and great work. I know how hard it is to get those grants, and what a cool thing for the RSCBA, and $2.8 million. So just wanted to give a shout out to that. On the contract, getting back to that, Ms. Silver's comment, I'm comfortable with the budget augmentation, but I would like to see the contract go out to locals. I do think it's high from what I've reviewed. From the red carpet, it seems high to me. I'm comfortable doing the augmentation, but I'd like to see a contract come in for less, and I would like to go out to our local community and allow them to bid. I just know when my father brought the Conference of Mayors here, it was a big success, and I mean, that was quite some time ago, but it had a lot of local flavor and incorporated, not just Reno, but Sparks, Tahoe, regionally. So I think it's to showcase our locals. So it would be great if Ann, you had indicated you had some folks locally, if they could look at doing the contract. Because you look at it, they have transportation, hosting the event at the bowling stadium, and our other facilities. Ones that have to go through ASM, since they're going to still be contracted to them. And I guess I don't know the date of the exact conference.
Well, the date of the conference would be next September June of 2022 is the date, that tentative date for that conference. The reason, and I apologize for maybe creating some confusion about opening both items at the same time. The reason I wanted to do that is just to make sure that we could open and have the discussion about augmenting the budget and make sure there's available funds if necessary. And I want to allow Mr. Larraguetta the opportunity to kind of speak to some of the discussions that have been had with the U.S. Conference of Mayors and at least 2 potential contractors for this event. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Larraguetta.
Thank you, Chairman Lucy. Good morning. I think the easiest way to approach this is I'd like to read my prepared statement, and I think that will provide some clarity as to the process of how we got to where we're at, and then I'll be happy to take specific questions relative to that statement. So good morning. For the record, Mike Larraguetta, Vice President of Sales. This morning, I'm requesting the board to review and approve the contract with Destination Management Company Red Carpet Events and Design for cost and services related to the 90th Annual U.S. Conference of Mayors. The RCVA requested and received 2 bids from local destination management companies. The 2 companies presented their bids to an RCVA committee consisting of myself, former Senior Sales Advance Manager Amy Green, former Sales Coordinator Kayla Devine, Vice President of Marketing Christina Ernie, and Regional Director of Convention Sales Jennifer Abdenor. This group unanimously agreed that Red Carpet was the preferred bid based on their presentation, creativity, and details in their proposal. The requested approval amount not to exceed $739,194 includes planning fees to include 1,900 labor hours, 2 3-hour themed events at designated venues for 1,000 attendees, inclusive of round-trip transportation, hosted food and beverage, entertainment, and decor. The approval for this requested amount also includes $50,000 in contingency funds. Planning fees include the following: research and operation of guest excursions with corresponding ticketing options, transportation, design, and logistics planning for 3 offsite activities, as Red Carpet will assist with the RCVA's hosted event at a RCVA facility, fully staffed concierge desk for the duration of the conference, event design for airport welcome and themed river room, scheduled meetings with the RCVA, U.S. Conference of Mayors, and other pertinent parties as needed, engage with fundraising entity to identify branded sponsorship opportunities within the conference as well as VIP events, assistance with VIP transportation and security needs as requested, research pre-conference event and tour opportunities, assist with information and creation of content about the events that may be needed for printed guides, web apps, website content, and social media content. The requested approval amount of $739,194 is predicated on zero sponsorship dollars being raised to offset this liability. Based on conversations with the U.S. Conference Mayor staff and cities that have previously hosted this event, we are confident that there will be significant interest in potential sponsors. Thank you.
And I want to add to Mr. Larraguetta's comments before we continue the conversation. The current U.S. Conference of Mayors that was scheduled for Austin this year is currently in limbo. That was going to be scheduled for September. That has been put in a position of hold, whether they go forward with that conference or not. They have a multitude of options. They could go digital, they could go move that meeting to a January date, or they could do a hybrid of some sort. And at this time, we have no idea where that will land. And so we may be the initial event for the U.S. Conference of Mayors post their 2-year hiatus from the COVID pandemic, if that is to be canceled. So those are some considerations that I want to make sure the board is aware of moving forward with this. Now, we do open these both at the same time, so there will be needs for two motions on this. And we can augment the budget and make sure that there's financial capabilities for the sales team to go pursue any events manager for this event. And it sounds like there is a willingness to do that. However, there sounds like there is also some willingness for this to be a little bit more open and not so sole discretionary to just red carpet events and design at this time. In conversations with the mayor, she has alluded to me that there are some other opportunities available, and she as well would like to see some of those opportunities explored prior to any contracts being executed. So I just wanted to put that on the record and make sure that we have that conversation. With that, Ms. Silver.
Yes, Mr. Chair, with great respect for Mike and Christina and whatever hours have gone into looking at the two bids, I think it's maybe to Councilwoman Bybee's point, we're being asked to, you already did something without the approval of a budget augmentation, so that's kind of backwards to me. But with that said, I think it's important that we consider red carpet events. I have no reason to believe they wouldn't do a great job, but I think it's ironic we're discussing using locals and being much more outward facing in terms of opportunities for our community vendors to come in. And for all I know, red carpet events is a local business. I don't know of them. They're not a chamber member, but I think it's really important that we do what we say what we mean, and we mean what we say, which is let's give an opportunity to entities that might have pieces of the expertise, or maybe it isn't just all one company, but we have 2,300 members, and about 100 of them do major events. And I would love to have been consulted and get our member list to see if there might be people who could pitch in and help with this. But it turns out that was done before the budget augmentation. So to Chairman Lucy's point, we've combined these two to say, can we approve the budget augmentation for a group that none of us were aware was being proffered to us today?
A couple of things. First of all, to the team internally has done a tremendous job to get us to this point. There's been a couple of hiccups to get us here, and from Mike, Christina, Courtney, and the entire team, kudos to you. The second thing is, from a leadership standpoint, I asked Mike to step in to do this, and part of that was to deferring to the expertise, what it takes on a large-scale event to make sure that one Reno is represented correctly and that we succeed. And I think that certainly Mike's been in this community for a long time, and certainly we absolutely consider locals when we go through that process. We need to be set up for success, and we're also less than a year out of this event. And so from a timing standpoint and from a securing of vendors and facilities and all those resources, we need to move as quickly as possible. And I just defer to his expertise running this operation that we've taken into consideration, those that we need to for this specific event, certainly not for all events, but I just want to be on the record for that. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Harris, I hope you know, and I hope these individuals know, that Chamber has great respect for their expertise and time. I'm just making a more conceptual point that we haven't even augmented the budget or voted to that, but there's already an entity selected to carry forward with this event. So it's just a little backwards to me, and I'm just always in favor of making sure that local opportunities are available. We've heard so much, as Ms. Ferraza said, about being outward facing towards the community, and I would just like to see that inherent in anything we do.
And Ms. Silverman, maybe I can, and I'll add just some clarity as well. One of the reasons I asked to have these opened at the same time is that because of the timeline and Mr. Larragueta's approach to trying to identify with the U.S. Conference of Mayors, because it has been a challenge to do so, and we are looking at opportunities of fundraising and a number of different things. We were trying to identify, because of the CEO change, and that this did occur under the leadership of a different leader, that we didn't absolutely have 100% understanding of what we would be accountable for. And so we wanted to bid that so we can kind of get some idea of what our liability would be. And when we initially bid or allocated the $360,000, we came to find out that that wasn't enough, significantly enough, to host the events that we had obligated to ourselves, that not this team, but a previous team had obligated themselves to. And so we have to now identify. So it was a process that seems backward and awkward, and I would agree with you, but it was necessary into finding what that number was so that we could come back and really ask the board whether or not an allocation of an augmented budget would be acceptable, and that this is a potential contract that's out there. There's no need to move forward with this contract. We can still just allocate the money and still pursue and identify another vendor. There are other vendors out there, as you've mentioned. We did solicit a proposal from a couple of vendors, but timing is also an issue with some of these things because those vendors may already be allocated to different events as well. And June's a difficult time frame, as we know, in our community to host events in post-COVID. So just some clarity. Provide that.
I appreciate that. I just have one question.
Sure.
How many room nights and how many people are we talking about?
Mike Larrigetta for the record. We're talking 1,000 people over the course of the 4 days, so we're looking at anywhere from 2,500 to 3,500 room nights. This conference is well attended by not only obviously the mayors and their staff and their delegates, but also family. So because of the time of year, being in the first week of June, we don't know based on different jurisdictions in the school schedule whether they'll be in school or out of school, so that will really impact how many families will attend, but we're looking at anywhere from 2,500 to 3,500 room nights.
Member Barbie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess what I'm struggling with is the amount that we're looking at. I understand the previous CEO is the one who submitted a bid for the conference. I also thought in information I've received from Mr. Kennedy on kind of clarity of what did we actually commit to, that the RCVA originally had committed to transportation and one night event, not the whole conference. So I guess my question would be, is the RSCVA the host of the conference versus the city of Reno and in other U.S. Conference of Mayors conferences? Is it the cities that sponsor? Is it DMO like us? But I guess I'm concerned because the initial $355,000 probably was adequate for what the understanding of what we were going to do in the beginning, and now we're looking at the whole amount, which is $1.45 million, which is like big difference. So can somebody clarify that for me?
Thank you, Mike Larrigetta, for the record. So just to provide some accuracy in terms of the numbers, the budget that was approved for the RSCVA for this event was $365,000, not $355,000, just for clarity. And the total liability that we're forecasting based on the bid that we received from the DMC, the contingency funds in our budget, is slightly under $1.1 million, not 1.4. Just so everybody's on the same page. As it relates to how this conference has worked, what I have learned over the last 12 months is you're correct. Generally, the city would bid on the conference on behalf of the city and would absorb the liability and the responsibility to go out and secure sponsorships to offset that expense. In our case, as Chairman Lucy indicated, we committed the bid in the prior organization, which basically create a liability, in my opinion, on the RCVA to absorb those expenses. So therefore, we were tasked with going out and putting ourselves in a position to raise that money to offset this event.
So is the city of Reno invested at all or working with us on fundraising, or do they have any financial commitment? Because we didn't commit over $1 million. We committed $365,000.
All right. Again, for the record, Mike Larrigetta, we had a planning committee established prior to the pandemic, and we actually just reinstated that committee at our first meeting earlier this week. And one of the things we discussed with representatives from the city and the mayor was that we definitely are going to look for some support, value in kind, however you want to define it, as it relates to transportation, security, road closures, police department support. So they definitely will have a part. It has not been defined at exactly what that is and what the cost associated with that is, but there definitely will be some liability on the city as well.
Okay. And it's not that I don't support this. I mean, we've gotten the bid. I think we need to host it. I mean, I'm not opposed to having it. It just, to me, what RCVA all of a sudden have the whole amount that we're responsible for, when that wasn't initially what it looked like, is a little concerning from a budget perspective for me. It needs to happen, and we need to see how we can make it happen. And obviously, we need the fundraising piece of it is going to be really important, so it's not coming out of our bottom line. So I guess that's a big thing that maybe the city and other business community here can help us do, because that's a lot of money to come out of the RCVA budget. But I do support the event, so thank you.
For the record, Charles Harrison. I just want to make sure that we all understand that the proposed total budget cost is before any fundraising is done. We expect that to be reduced, and that will absolutely help the bottom line. The challenge that we all have is we don't know what those dollars are now, right? So we're chasing that. We actually have talked to several folks in order to do so, and we're going to work very hard to make sure that we limit that exposure for the organization moving forward.
And one other point of clarification too is that the event hasn't been completely identified specifically what it's going to look like. It could be exactly like Austin. It could be a hybrid model. It's a very fluid, dynamic situation, and I know that's not always the best way to go and budget money for, but unfortunately we are in that situation right now, so we have to be a little bit flexible and I know Mr. Harris is in contact with Mr. Larragetta, with the CEO of the Conference of Mayors, and they are having that discussion constantly about what this event will look like in the future coming up. Ms. Fraza.
Yeah, just a couple things, and I think Councilman Bybee bring up some excellent points too. And is there a win-win here? Because if we're going to have this expenditure, just getting back to Ann, and I do think Mike and his team, and I know you guys do an amazing job and went out, and it's part of it is the time crunch. Is there a way to ask Red Carpet about using some local folks, since we are using room tax revenue, to help with this event so the local businesses benefit too? Can we do an ask of them? Because I do think we're far down the line. And I do agree with you, Councilman Bybee, maybe we set that cap, and then if that cap, I think we need to obviously the city of Reno has to have a skin in the game, but also how these things work. There's typically, as you know, from League of Cities and others, national sponsors that come in too. So I think that amount's gonna, probably come down substantially. So that's my only question. I am in favor of moving forward as well. And maybe there's something we can do with Red Carpet, or to make it a local, to get some local people in under that contract.
Thank you, Mr. Fraza. Mr. Murdoch.
Thank you. A couple things. I heard the word fundraising, and I know from the experience I was around, because I am one of the senior members, when Mr. Mayor Speraza did that conference. And you will have, for instance, Caesars would host the cocktail party over at the bowling stadium for the mayors, something like that. This is a no-brainer. The national sponsors will come out. You're going to have all those mayors here, whether it's the police radios. So I think we really need to understand, Mike, I think you could clarify. The fundraising is not that big a deal because you've got all the history there. You know from every conference who the sponsors are. So the money, you're allocated $359,000, but what you get back, you'll get it back in sponsorship. But I go back to one more point. I go back to Miss USA. It was a wonderful event, and we did it. And I'll tell you what, the press and the PR, you couldn't put a number on what we got out of Miss USA. It was out at the GSR, and it was downtown. It was Harrah's. It was when Harrah's was out. So it was a great collaborative work. But that will happen in the Conference of Mayors as well. The people that want to step up. But you can fundraise, Mike, right? This isn't. So that number, if you don't hit one penny, that's the number. I just want to be clear that you're going to go raise and you're going to hire a professional fundraiser, correct?
Yeah, for the record, Mike Larragetta, Mr. Murdoch, yes, absolutely. Right now, we are forecasting our total liability, which includes the RSCBA approved budget for this event, at just over $1 million. And I think it's important to note a few things just based on what I'm hearing from the board, is that we've identified this DMC as our choice, right? This is a proposal. We have the ability, if the board so chooses to move forward with the selection of Red Carpet, we have the ability to go back and work with them to modify, right, what we're looking at, the biggest challenge with an event like this is you're moving 1,000 people and you have to move them to a specific location in order for an event to take place. So could we do that and get local entities involved? Absolutely. But it has to be in a situation where they are either willing to come and set up booths and do a dine around or whatever it may be, or whether it's an Idlewater Park, or the options are endless, right? We absolutely, and I'm not to speak on behalf of the DMC, but I'm sure they would be open to looking at different options and explore those and see how we can engage the community even more, whether that's Reno, Sparks, or North Lake Tahoe. The second thing I think, to Mr. Murdoch's point, is important to comment to the board is that this conference generally takes place or has taken place in Tier 1 cities: Boston, New York, Honolulu, Austin. This is, other than when Board Member Ferraz's father hosted this years ago, generally takes place in major metropolitan cities. What we have learned that the budgets that have been allocated to host this event in those cities is in the range of $5 to $6 million. So for us to be able to put this event on a forecasted amount of $1 million, to Mr. Murdoch's point, I'm extremely confident that we will have the sponsors to offset that liability and make this work.
Wonderful. So I think that through this, we've seen a number, I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and I think there's, obviously, this is a ongoing discussion. I think there's just a willingness to participate and make sure that this is a very highly successful for a number of different reasons. At this time, I think we should probably move forward. What I'd like to do is talk about, and one other thing before we do move forward with the augmentation, I did want to bring this point up as well, is that if we do augment the budget in the amount of $690,000, in addition to the $365 that's already been augmented, any monies that aren't used can be and will be returned back into the budget in another augmentation, which we will do and have promised to do down the line. So there is some reassurance through the fundraising opportunities and different things that we will be able to not only secure the event, make sure the event is hosted properly, but if not, and if no money is raised, we can pay for it. But if money is raised, all that money that we augmented will be returned to the budget and back into for opportunities for other services to be put in other places. So, seeing no further discussion at this time, what I would do is I'm looking for a motion to augment the budget and Resolution 594, adopting the augmentation of the $690,000.
Mr. Chair, is this a public hearing? Do we have to open it up first?
It is a public hearing,
Before I make a motion.
Yes, we can open the public hearing. Thank you, Councilwoman Bybee. So this is a public hearing for that augmentation. Is there any public comment?
No public comment at this time on this item.
All right, seeing no public comment in the public hearing, we'll close that. At this time, now I'm looking for a motion to move forward.
Okay, now I'm ready.
All right.
I move to approve the resolution number 594, adopting a budget augmentation for the Reno Sparks Convention Visitors Authority for fiscal year 2020-2021 in the amount of $690,000 for the general fund.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilwoman Bybee. Do I have a second? Second from Mr. Murdoch. What's that, Ms. Fraza?
No, I just said Shannon Keel second.
Oh, okay. We'll do Mrs. Keel as our second today. So I've got a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote. All those.
Sorry, point of clarity, are we 2021 or 21-22?
22. So this will be a budget augmentation for fiscal year 22.
All right, so that's a point of clarification. Does the motioner understand?
Okay, I'm sorry, I was reading the highlighted and then I went down below because it highlighted says 2020, 2021. So I will amend my motion to change to 2021, 2022.
All right, we have an amended motion. Ms. Keel, do you accept the amended motion?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Seeing we have a motion and a second, we've taken public comment for the public hearing. I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously with all members voting. All right. Now that we have E3 open as well, and we've had the discussion about possible approval of the contract with Red Carpet Events, at this time, I don't believe that it is necessary. But what I would ask is that we have a potential motion in the, to move forward with identifying Mr. Lair, got to help me with a conference management, DMC.
The DMC, Destination Management Company.
Yes, thank you. Destination. So move forward with pursuing to find a new, another proposal from another DMC or other potential DMCs. So.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to go ahead and move forward with the red carpet group on the condition that they work with Ms. Silver on potentially the local, trying to bring in as many local subcontractors as we can. I do agree with staff, our CEO, and Mr. Larraguetta. I mean, time's of the essence. In order to make this conference a success, I just want staff to have the flexibility to be able to move forward.
Okay.
So I'm still making the motion.
So I have a motion now to accept the proposal and move forward with negotiations with Red Carpet Events and Design. Is that how I understand it, Ms. Safraza?
Yeah, the negotiations and also obviously getting sign off from U.S. Conference of Mayors too, I think would be helpful if they see these contracts, I'm sure. So if they have any input, but and seeing if we can get that cost down too, if there's anything, as Mr. Larraguetta had stated.
Okay. So I have a motion.
May I make a comment before the motion?
Just further discussion.
Yes, I would like to amend the motion to request that that Red Carpet Events become a member of the chamber so that in fact we can then work with them to ensure that we're using many local businesses that can provide transportation and security.
Ma'am, we can't bind another organization to that, so
I'm sorry.
We can't do that. No, unfortunately, it'd be nice.
It'd be
but
nice.
we can't do that.
Then I'll
we can ask
retract it
them.
as a statement. I will
We're
ask
going to ask them very
I will
politely.
ask them.
Mr.
No
Murdoch.
problem.
Further
From my
discussion.
experiences downtown, we've worked with Red Carpet a lot, and they are local to us. So I'm sure that we could talk to that group and make sure that they do hire local. I don't think there's an issue here at all. And I agree with everybody in the room. Let's get moving. Let's get going. Let's get this done.
So I have a motion to accept and move forward with the contract with Red Carpet Events and Design on the floor. Do I have a second? I have a second from Mr. Murdoch. Yeah, and then legal. Mr. Kennedy.
Sorry.
I don't know who I'm going to today.
So I just want to make it clear. So we're moving to accept the contract subject to further negotiations. And I just also like to add that we're authorizing Mr. Harris at the conclusion of those negotiations to execute that contract.
That is my understanding, Mr. Kennedy, for my motion, from the motion and the seconder, unless there is any kind of dissension from that motion. I see none.
Second again.
All right. Seeing nothing further, is there any public comment on this item?
No public comment at
Seeing
this
no
time.
public comment, we will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously with all members present voting. We're on to item E4, and this was brought forward in a discussion at the previous board meeting about changing the rules and procedures to move our meetings that used to be on a monthly routine to a bi-monthly, but back to, bi-monthly, and back to a regular monthly schedule. However, and that was under the discussion of some board members based upon discussions about some future obligations and discussions we're having. However, after taking this under advisement, I think that instead of changing the rules and procedure, I'm going to pull this item for today, and I'll explain why I'm pulling the item for the day. We probably are going to have more regular meetings, but I, as a chair, will be able to call those meetings as special meetings, and we will keep them on some sort of a regularity for the time being, and we will just, every other meeting, we will call a special meeting until Mr. Harris and Mr. Larraguetta and staff and Ms. Yeager and Phil and Ms. Ernie feel that we are comfortably in a place to no longer need monthly meetings and go back to a bi-monthly schedule. So I'm going to pull that item for today and move on to item F, which is board member comments. Is there any comments? Ms. Bybee?
So because that's been pulled, we're not discussing that item at all today? Okay.
Can I ask the chair, can we just have I just have a couple questions on it. I hear where you're coming from,
You can make, remember for Safraza, we can make comments for future meetings. But in regards to that item, it's not necessary. We can't deliberate on that at this time, but you can make comments if you'd like, ma'am.
if for everyone's schedule, and we just have so much on the docket that's going on with the RSCDA right now, I'm just concerned about the bi-weekly meetings or bi-monthly meetings. And then just the other thing I was going to add under board member comments, if we could get a Zoom link to all our meetings, just so the public, we want to get the community, again, back to the community, if we can have the Zoom link so it's just accessible to everyone. I would just, those are my only comments. But just for scheduling, it makes it hard if people, I would rather have it standing on the agenda, because I just have a feeling we're going to get everything on the docket. It's up to you, Mr. Chair.
Here's what I will tell you, Member Sfraza, is that what we would do is that if a special meeting was called on an off month that is not currently in the bylaws, it would be on that regular scheduled Thursday date. So you can anticipate that there would probably be a special meeting unless otherwise notified by myself or the CEO that there would not be one. But I would anticipate being a special meeting on every fourth Thursday occurring on the off months that are currently not scheduled. Does that make sense? For scheduling purposes?
It does, but for example, this one was on the third Thursday of the month. So that's how I'm saying for people's schedules, and we do have a third of the board absent today. I just think we're better off planning, but that does make sense. I'll just go ahead and mark it in mine as, fourth Thursday.
And I apologize. I know this is irregular that we have it on the third Thursday. We did that obviously to address the RFP issue and the U.S. Conference of Mayors due to timing and the budget augmentation. So that was the reason for that. Had it not been for timing, we would have convened probably on the regular time on the fourth Thursday. So that was the only decision that changed the meeting for today.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Bybee. Ms. Bybee.
Is she not finished?
I have just clarification. Are there going to be 9? Are you going to keep to the 9 for the regular meetings?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, just to make comments on, because I know we're not deliberating today, but I think that having the flexibility to, if we do need to meet monthly, a special meeting, then a regular schedule, then a special meeting, it gives us flexibility. I've been on other boards that are bi-monthly, Regional Planning Governing Board, and when we are in the middle of regional plan update or big things, we'd have to call additional meetings. So fully understandable when we have a lot of time-sensitive decisions that we need to make. Makes sense that we need to do that. We're still coming out of COVID, or maybe stepping back and then moving forward. So that's at issue with us for us right now. I also thought that for future meetings, we need to get started on the strategic plan, because I thought we were looking at moving into that this year. So that is something else that requires meeting more often. And I would request, as I have read the book that Charles gave us on best practices for boards and DMO boards, really looking at our agendas and how to make them most. Today is great because everything we're doing are business items and not just reports that we could read on updates. We get the updates from the CEO. Staff keeps us updated, but the purpose of these meetings is actually action items and strategic planning and major decisions like we're making today. But by making the meetings where we feel like it's important that we're here, it's the best use of everyone's time and staff time during those meetings. And I think that would help, and it would also, when we do have to meet, maybe monthly, keeping the meetings to a lesser time frame, because none of us want to have a 3 to 4 hour meeting. We have enough other boards and commissions that wind up doing that. So I think for the best use of everyone's time, that's just my input. I think that's a positive.
Thank you, Ms. Bybee. Mr. Harris.
Councilwoman Bybee, thank you. A couple things. First of all, to everybody in the room, online, and in the community, first of all, thank you for filling out the survey that we've asked everyone to weigh in on as we move forward, leading up to and building the strategic plan. We're going to keep that survey open here for a couple of weeks, and we're encouraging everyone to weigh in and fill out that survey. Councilwoman Bybee, that actually would lead into one of the special meetings that the chair is talking about in October, and we're working with the chair and the board to help finalize that, which will ultimately lead to the skeleton version of a brand new 3-year strategic plan, weighing in with the board and the community and our staff. And so we are moving forward with that, and that is planned for later this year.
Mr. Murdoch.
I just have a little different view as a casino taxpayer when we're paying all the room tax into the coffers out here. And if you read the mission statement, it's important that right now through this COVID that we meet and understand where we're going, because we're going to be competing against a lot of other destinations when the USA gets healthy. I think it's imperative. It's been done for 20 years. I was on the airport board. We met every Thursday. That wasn't as huge of a taxation base as this organization is. So from a stakeholder's perspective, the room tax coming out here, we feel like we need to be in touch every 30 days and understand what's going on because of where we are in the country and in our own tourism destination. That's all my comments are.
All right. Thank you. Any further comments from any of the board members? All right. Seeing none, we will. Go ahead, Member Safraza.
Just really quickly, I did see, I just wanted to clarify the November, obviously that's Thanksgiving, so the 23rd December and 25th November. Did we have alternative dates for those months?
So what we have done in the past for the RSCVA, we've always had that meeting convene on the first week of December. It's usually around December 6th is that date. And so we combine the November and December meetings into that December 6th to address, I'm getting the December 9th is going to be that date.
I'm just trying to put them in just for planning.
Yes,
okay.
December 9th.
That is.
We would reconvene in January.
It's the same date as the airport authority, and I'm the airport rep. So I don't know, but.
Well, what we can do is I will work with Ms. Carlson, and we'll see if we can find some alternative dates, but it's usually around that first or second week of December so that we are not imposing on the holiday schedule for anybody, board or staff. So I will work with Ms. Carlson and get out to the board to identify what that date is for the December meeting.
Mr. Chair,
Silver.
just a comment. I don't think that any of us plan for monthly, and so certainly I have conflicts with the EDAWN board and with our own events that take place on the same Thursdays. So I think we're just all going to have to be flexible and understand that as long as we have a quorum, we'll move forward. We have a lot to get done, and just understanding that many of us have conflicts if we start meeting monthly.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Silver. And I want to reassure the board that this idea is not to limit the amount of meetings and limit the ability for this board to convene and have discussion, It's to, and I can, from discussions with the CEO and other members, this is to better have better contact with them, because there are a number of things, as we've discussed today. The budget is a major one. Strategic planning is a second. We have the U.S. Conference of Mayors that we're heavily involved in. Another thing that we are now going to be engaged in, Ms. Yeager will be heavily engaged in, is the tourism bills that are coming out of the federal government from the American Rescue Plan Act. And so with a number of those things, to Mr. Murdoch's point, I think it's necessary that we have those monthly meetings until staff, and especially Mr. Harrison, until he feels that he's adequately situated and has a number of these fires put to bed, then we can go back to whatever schedule. But I am going to work with the CEO and this board to make sure that all those issues are addressed. So thank you. Those are my comments. I have seen nothing further from any of the board members. Is there any public comment?
No public comment at this
All right,
time.
seeing no further public comment, ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.